beneficial in so many ways, because getting a part-time job helps you prioritize and helping to pay for college before you get there. You should definitely get to scholarships. So if you are going to go to college, I highly recommend that you try to stick it out, because if you know, part of saving for college is fulfilling your dreams. So if you're
those loans. So she knows a lot of financial wisdom. Whenever I need something, I usually ask her, and she's always got more than I can understand in a response usually. But she's really, really smart. She knows what she's going to do, and hopefully we can all learn something from her today as well. So Raynell, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, everyone. And like Brian said, or Mr. Bates, my name is Raynell Lenz. I've been at the Dime Bank for about 8 years. I started off as a teller and then worked my way over as a credit analyst. And then after that, I am where I am now. I'm a loan representative. And part of what my job is now, I deal with commercial loans. So those are business loans. And I absolutely love what I do. And I thank you all that I'm here today. So hopefully you'll have some takeaways from what I say today. But most importantly, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask. I am at your disposal with any questions at all. So by all means, ask away about any topics. I tend to go quickly through this outline here. But if there's anything else you'd like to discuss more in detail, please let me know. So the first topic I'd like to talk about is saving, which is part of managing your finances. Now, does anyone know an example of why saving is important? Anyone? Yes.
College funds.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Say it louder, Ben.
College funds.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That's a great example. So saving for college is absolutely crucial. So part of saving for college is fulfilling your dreams. So a dream of yours might be to go to college. So yes, that is absolutely a reason why saving is important. Another reason saving is important is also to avoid debt. Unfortunately, debt is necessary this day and age, and debt is when you borrow money. So in order to minimize debt, it's very important that we have a proper savings and savings goal in mind. Also, an important reason to save is to reduce financial stress and to have financial freedom. So the more you save, the more money you have to spend on the necessities in life, and therefore reduces your stress, since you'll have that cushion there for you. And lastly, the last I have noted for a reason to save is as an emergency fund. So everyone as an adult should have an emergency fund, to have funds in place for when accidents happen or incidentals happen. So like me, I have a house, and unfortunately my refrigerator went recently. So I had to use part of my emergency fund to buy a new fridge, but that's why we have it. So when those things happen, I'm okay. I can still get a fridge and I can still keep my food cold. Does anyone have any questions about saving? No? Okay, great. I must be doing good then if there's no questions. The next I'd like to talk about is building good saving habits. Now, part of building good savings habits is understanding your wants versus needs. Now, a want is something that you aspire to have, something you'd really like to have. A need is a necessity, where you have to have it in order to live. So can anyone give me an idea or an example of what a want would be? Yes.
New car.
Yes, absolutely. That is a great example. A new car is definitely a want. I am part of that group as well. I would love a new car, but unfortunately, it's not always a need. Like for me, myself, I have a used car and it is working just fine. So I don't have a need for a new car. Great example. Now, can anyone give me an example of what a need would be? Yes, in the back.
Food.
Yes, food, absolutely. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but food is an important part of our budget, which we're going to have soon, which you'll see is one of our needs that we have to have in life. So it's a great example. Awesome. So now that we've talked about our wants versus needs, the next topic I'd like to talk about is comparison shopping. Now, when you all go to the store, you'll see lots of products out there. And a lot of times you'll see similar products. Some are name brand, some are off brand, and the off brand might be a little bit cheaper. But you have to weigh the pros and the cons of the more expensive name brand option versus the lower, maybe store brand option, and see if, okay, I can save a few dollars if I get the cheaper off brand. Is it worth it? So it's important to comparison shop and see if it's really apples to apples or apples to oranges, where if it's truly comparable in value, where you could afford to go with the cheaper option, or if you should spend that little bit extra to get a better product. So it's important to comparison shop. Next is coupons and discounts. Coupons and discounts are an amazing way to save money. You might get coupons in your local paper. You might see digital coupons online. Coupons are an amazing way to save money. And sometimes you can get free stuff with coupons. So if you're trying to build good saving habits, it's important to use coupons and to know how to use them. Here in America, we have certain days of the week where if we give a coupon for an item you're purchasing, you can either double or triple that coupon. So maybe that coupon's only for $1, but on that certain day, you can get $2 or $3 off that product. So there's ways to really maximize your coupons and discounts. Does anyone have any questions about any of that? No? Okay, great. The next, I'd like to talk about savings and checking accounts and the difference between the two. Now, if I could see a show of hands, how many of you have a savings account or a checking account? Okay, all right, a few of you. Excellent. So with savings and checking accounts, that is an account you have that holds your money for you. Now, with a savings account, that is strictly to store your money. So you can't really use a debit card on that account or a check. You can't write checks off the account. But with a savings account, you generally earn interest. Now, interest is a percentage of money you can earn off the money you have in your savings account. And so there's a lot of different savings accounts that you can have. And even some checking accounts that you can gain interest. So it's important to make sure that what account you have is the right fit for you. Because although some savings accounts can have a very high interest rate, so you can make a lot of money off the interest you have in there, they sometimes have minimum balances where they might require you to have a $500 minimum balance or something to that nature. And if you were to drop below that minimum balance, you might be charged a fee. So it's important to make sure that you read all the documents and to make sure you understand everything that's involved with that account that you're opening, especially a savings account. Now with checking accounts, you can have a debit card hooked up to it. You can write checks off that account and you can use them regularly for all of your expenses. Like I said before, checking accounts can have interest rates associated with them, but they also might have a minimum balance like a savings account. So it's important to make sure you pick the correct checking account for you. Anyone have any questions about that? Yes, in the back.
So is a checking account an account you take money from, and a saving account money you save, I guess?
Good question. So yes, a checking account is where you would deposit funds into. So you could actually move it from your savings account to your checking account as you use the funds out of it, as you have expenses. So yes, a checking account is where all of your expenses would come out of, but you'd have to make sure you put money in there as you take money out to pay for things. And a savings account is generally where you put all of your money because that's usually where you get your highest interest. Yes, go ahead.
So you said that savings account is the one where it's like you would get interest if you leave like a certain amount of money in there?
You can, but if it's an interest-bearing account, you will gain interest on no matter how much you have in there. So depending on the dollar amount, you will always get interest. Now, if it requires a minimum balance, you might be charged a fee if you drop below that, but otherwise you will still gain interest on no matter the balance of that account. Great question. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Bryan.
If I want a credit card, how would that tie into my savings account for checking?
So a credit card doesn't really tie into that. A credit card is separate on its own. A credit card is actually a mini loan. So if you were to use a credit card, every time you use that credit card, you're putting that on a mini loan. So if you were to pay that at the end of the month, you could tie it to your checking account so it could be paid automatically, but it's a mini loan, so it's not really tied to it. Any more questions? Go ahead.
Are you able to get like a little bit of interest off like checking account? I've been wondering that. Is it like absolutely no interest in the checking account, or is it like a very small percentage compared to the savings account?
Good question. So, sorry. So generally, it's a very, very small amount or almost no interest on a checking account. Great questions. Okay, so we talked about interest. All right, budgeting. This is my favorite topic. Budgeting is an extremely, extremely important part of your financial, of managing your finances. Now, does anyone know what a budget is or can give me a definition of what a budget is? No? Oh, yep, go ahead.
Like a limit on your spending.
What was that?
A limit on your spending.
Goes hand in hand, yes. So a budget is a plan for your money. So with a budget, you would track your income. So if you get a paycheck, let's say once a week, you would put in the income you have from that job, and then you would assign a line item for each expense you have with that income. So most people usually in their budgets monthly. So all of their income, they calculate what's that's going to be for the month, and then they itemize all of their expenses, whether it's their utilities, their electric bill, their rent for their home, their entertainment. If they, prioritize eating out, they assign some to that. So that primarily is what a budget is. Now, this goes back to our needs versus wants as well. With your budget, you have to really determine what your needs are first. And so you'd allocate the money to your needs. And then if there's any money left over, you could allocate that money to your wants. Okay. Let's see. Does anyone? Oh, yes, in the back. Go ahead.
So is budgeting and accounting the same thing?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Is budgeting and accounting like the same thing?
Budgeting is like accounting. Absolutely. So accounting is you're managing your debits and your credits. And that's exactly what a budget is, because you're managing the income, which is the credits, and the expenses, which is your debits. So absolutely, yes, that is exactly what accounting is. Great, great question. Anyone else have any questions about the budgets? Okay, great. So I encourage you, if you don't already, there are so many amazing, wonderful budget apps that you can download on your phone. And especially when you go into college, there are some amazing budget apps that I encourage you to use. And even in your free time, if you have a job now, you can do your own budget based off the expenses you might have now, whether you have a phone bill or something like that. You can allocate funds for all of your income that you have. So it's a great idea to start that now, because in the future, you'll have a better understanding of how to do it when you have a bigger paycheck. No one has any questions? Okay, great. All right. So moving on to credit. As Mr. Bates mentioned earlier, credit cards are an incredibly useful tool. And like I mentioned, they are a mini loan. So they're much different than debit cards because debit cards are tied to your checking account. So with a credit card, you have to pay off that balance as you put money on it. Now, it's incredibly important to make sure you only put the amount on the credit card that you can pay off at the end of the month. Because if you carry a balance on your credit card on that loan, you'll have to pay interest on that. And the interest on credit cards is incredibly high. Unfortunately, credit cards can have from 15 to 30% interest. So that's a large, large amount of money that you have to pay the credit card companies each month if you don't pay it off at the end of the month. So credit cards can be wonderful, but they can also be detrimental if you don't use them properly. So if there's one thing you remember from all this, is I hope you remember that you only put expenses on the credit card that you can pay off at the end of the month. It's incredibly important to do that. And also when you do that, you're building your credit score. So does anyone know what a credit score is? No? Okay. So a credit score is a number they assign to you to determine how creditworthy you are. So if you pay your credit card each month as you're supposed to, that number will go higher. And the higher your credit score, the more creditworthy you are. So that when it's time to go get a car loan or a loan for a house, they'll pull your credit and they'll see how well you are at paying your bills. And then they will give you a loan or base the interest rate off how high your credit score is. So credit scores are very, very important in your future. Here in the US, we can't even sign up to have electricity without them pulling our credit score because the electric companies want to make sure that we're going to pay our bills or we're likely to pay our bills based off our credit score. Even when I started my job at the Dime Bank, they pulled my credit to make sure that, okay, they're hiring a person who is responsible with their money. So your jobs could pull your credit score, your utility companies could pull your credit score. So credit score plays a large impact in your financial future. Does anyone have any questions about credit scores or credit cards? Yes.
Which one would you recommend, credit card or debit card?
So I would recommend a debit card first, just so you can get a handle on your finances. And then once you are able to use a debit card and you're comfortable using a debit card and you're only putting the expenses on it that you need, because remember, a debit card uses the money that's in your checking account. So you can't overspend. It would decline you if you try to spend too much. So once you're comfortable and you have a comfort level with using a debit card, then you could go into a credit card where you could use that mini loan as long as you're responsible with it and you're disciplined to only put what you can afford on it. So yes, great question. Go ahead. Yep.
What would happen if your credit score?
What's that?
What would happen if your credit score is extremely low?
Good question. So if you have a very low credit score, you will most likely be denied loans, and they would put you on a payment plan for your utility bill. So most people pay their utility bills at the end of the cycle. So when the money's already due. But if you have a very poor credit score, they might not even hook up to your home. There's a lot of things that can happen with a low credit score. So you want to make sure you always are in check with your credit score. And you can actually check it free online too. So you can always see where you're at. Great question. Anyone else? No? Okay.
Sorry, I got a question.
Yes.
Are there any benefits that you can get from using a credit card versus cash?
Good question. Yes. Credit cards have a lot of benefits. And that's what makes them so appealing, is that the credit card companies will sell you all the benefits that their credit cards can offer. So a lot of credit cards offer airline miles, cash back, free hotel stays, lots of things. So for me, I picked a credit card that fits my lifestyle. So the credit card I have, I get 5% cash back on all grocery stores all gas stations and stuff like that. So for me, that's the one I picked. But like I said, you have to be careful because you don't want to overspend. I've been very fortunate that I have only ever made money off my credit card. I've never paid a penny in interest. And I hope all of you do the same, where you just can take advantage of all the perks the credit cards can offer, and that you're disciplined and only use it for what you can afford. Great question. Anyone else? Yes.
How can your credit score affect like a job that you get?
Good question. Yes. So I actually had a friend of mine. She applied for a job locally and she did not have good credit. She was not paying her bills on time. I think she said she wasn't paying her phone bill on time, and they reported that to her the credit score. And so when she went to her job, they said, "Hey, we pulled your credit. It's not good. We're willing to hire you, but you have to show us that you're improving your credit. You need to clean up these issues." So she had to contact all the companies that she was late to and pay all those back fees, because they make you pay late charges if you don't pay things on time. So she had to pay all those late fees to help build her credit back up and show that she is responsible with the debts that she has. Great question. Anyone else? Okay. All right, moving on, we'll go to loans. So we talked about credit cards, like a mini loan, but a lot of people get auto loans or home loans when they purchase a house. So when you get an auto loan, it'll have a little bit different of an interest rate compared to a home loan. An auto loan is usually for anywhere from 5 to 7 years, and your payment will be based off that. And a home loan is usually for 30 years. And a good rule of thumb is when you get a home loan, is that your mortgage payment, which is your payment for your home, shouldn't be more than 4 times your annual income. So if you make $4,000 a month, your mortgage payment shouldn't be more than $1,000. Let's see. Okay, moving on. How to prepare for college and manage money while there. Okay, like I mentioned before, and my favorite topic, set a budget. There are so many wonderful budget apps, like I mentioned. Definitely use a budget app while you're at college. Make sure you're tracking all of your expenses, because it's so easy for it to get away from you while you're there. It can be so easy to just go hang out with your friends, go to a movie, go mini golfing, and you can just spend and lose track of it. So it's very important to stick to your budget, and you might have to say no a couple times to hanging out with friends or doing some fun things. But I promise you, in the end, it'll be worth it. You'll be thanking me because you're going to have a sound financial future if you're able to stick to your budget, have your savings plan in place, and you will be able to put a down payment on a car or even pay for it in cash, and maybe a down payment on a house too. So use the budget app and stick to it. And in setting up a budget, you also need to track your expenses. Make sure that all your expenses are in line. And also part of tracking your expenses is making sure that none of them are fraudulent, because this day and age, people are able to hack into your email, they can hack into your accounts, they can steal your account information, and they can make charges to your account that aren't authorized. So if you're able to keep track of all your expenses, you'll be able to see if any of those weren't actually your expenses, and if someone hacked into your account and is making purchases on your behalf. Because then you can contact your bank, you can say, I didn't spend that there, and they can reverse it and refund you. So it's important to keep on track of that and to make sure that no fraudsters are getting into your accounts. Any questions about that? Yes.
Is there a way for the bank to know that you aren't the one that spent the money?
Great question. Yes, there is. So the banks have complex algorithms and software in place where we're able to determine where the debit took place. So if there was a transaction on your card for, let's say, a restaurant, they can see where in location of that transaction. So if you live in, like me, Pennsylvania, but that transaction took place in Alaska, they'll say, this probably wasn't her. She lives in Pennsylvania. I don't think she's in Alaska right now. Let's check. So they'll contact you and say, hey, are you in Alaska traveling? And you'll say yes or no. And they say, okay, well, if this is fraud, we'll return it. So yes, they do have software in place that helps track this and keep fraudsters out. Great question. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Bates.
How can you, because we make a lot of online payments, how can you trust space? What are some ways that we can know that when something's asking for payment information, we can know that it's a verified and trustable site?
Great question. So when you make payments online, you're going to see little boxes on the bottom, and they're going to say McCaffrey secured or other security measures that they use. So you'll see the companies they use that keep your information secure. So that's something to keep an eye out for when you're making payments online, is to look for those logos of who they use as their security companies. Because I would say, well, I've only ever seen them everywhere. So the ones that are true and legitimate will have those McCaffrey secured logos on the bottom showing that it is secure, that all your information is being kept secure. Great question. Yes.
You said that it was that in this day and age, it's really easy to like hack into someone's account.
Yes.
Can you give like a scenario where it would be like really easy for like a hacker to get into your account?
Well, I can give you an example of what happened to me just last week. So I was talking to a customer of mine, and he was purchasing a home. And this was all through email. And we're going back and forth with his attorney. His attorney said, okay, we're ready to go. Just wire me the money. And this was no small dollar amount. This was millions of dollars. And we've worked with this attorney before. We're like, okay, we'll send you the money. We sent the money to them. It was a scammer. He spoofed the attorney's email. So the attorney was never getting the emails. This spammer intercepted the email, and it was never getting to him and was replying back to us, making it seem like it was him and legitimate. Thankfully, the other bank caught it and said, this isn't normal for this customer, and returned the money, because that customer could have been out thousands, millions of dollars. So it can be really scary because you think you're talking to someone through an email that you've talked to before, but they're somehow able to spoof the email and make it seem like it's legitimate. Great question. Anyone else? Okay, great. Moving on. Okay, so part of college is unfortunately sometimes taking out debt. When you take out debt, it's really important to have a debt payoff plan, because when you take out debt, although they give you a lot of time to pay it off, it's very important that you prioritize paying it off early, because the sooner you pay it off, the less interest you pay. And as we know, interest can be very high sometimes. So it's important, very important to have a debt payoff plan. So when you're doing your budget, if you can allocate more money to the debt that you have, then you definitely should, because paying off debt should be one of your first priorities once you get a job. Also, in preparing for college is getting a part-time job. It's a great idea to get a part-time job while in college. It'll help pay for expenses, helps pay for books, and help you build a savings account that'll help you in the future when you do graduate college. So getting a part-time job is a great idea, and it can be beneficial in so many ways, because getting a part-time job helps you prioritize your time, and it forces you to make good decisions about where you allocate your time. Because a lot of times we don't want to study, but we have to. And if you have a job, you have to say, okay, I work from 3 to 5, but then from 5 to 6, I have to study. So getting a part-time job is a way to help you better yourself in the future. Any questions about that? Yes.
The let's say you're in a situation where you're unable to pay your student loans and you're racking up huge amounts of debts. Is there any legal action that would be taken, or is there like any way to get out of that situation?
Good question. So if you are not able to pay your student loans, they will put that on your credit score. And like I mentioned, your credit score is very important. So your credit score will nosedive if you don't pay those. But they do offer solutions. If you are struggling to make those payments, you can refinance them, do a longer term. Although I wouldn't recommend that, it is an option if you can't make those payments. Because the longer term you have on your student loans, the longer you're going to be paying them and the more interest you're going to be paying in the long run. So the sooner you pay them off, the better. But yes, there are options when it comes to paying your student debt. Great question. Anyone else? Okay. Great. Let's see. Retirement. So I know you guys are probably thinking, why is she talking about retirement? But it is never too early to talk about retirement. When you get a job, as soon as you get a job, you should always be putting money towards your retirement. Now, this is money you'll use when you're ready to stop working. And usually most people stop working around the age of 65. So you guys have a long way to go. But if you start working on it now and saving money for your retirement, you'll be able to retire comfortably without having to worry about how your bills are going to be paid. So what most people do is each paycheck, a portion of it goes directly to their retirement. And a lot of people have what's called an IRA, which is an individual retirement account. And this has a set interest rate, which is usually a little bit better because it's not as easy to pull the funds out like a savings account or a checking account. With an individual retirement account, that money has to stay in there for a certain period of time. So that's why you can get a little bit better interest. Any questions about retirements? I know I brushed over that quickly, but if you have any questions. Yes, in the back.
Is it possible to retire early? Like, for example, someone retired by the age of 30 or something?
You can certainly retire early, and that is also my plan. I've been contributing a lot of money to my retirement account because I would ideally like to retire when I'm 50. So that's a great question, and you can certainly apply as much money as you'd like to your retirement account. And if you can, you certainly should. But just know that if you put that money into your retirement account, you can't easily get it. Although you can cash out your retirement account if you have to, you will pay major penalties. So I wouldn't recommend it to cash it out. But yes, if you can apply more to your retirement account, you definitely should so you can retire early. Great question. Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, that's all I had, unless anyone else has anything they'd like to talk about of any topics I didn't discuss. Yes, in the back.
So do you have any information about assets and liabilities?
About assets? I'm sorry.
Assets and liabilities. Do you have any information about that?
Oh, assets and liabilities? Absolutely. Yes. Okay. So assets are anything that you own that has a tangible value. And a tangible value would mean cash on hand or cash in the banks. Any property you might own, whether it's real estate or a vehicle. That would also include any type of life insurance that is intangible. Other assets could include any valuables you have, jewelry, art, things of that nature. And so that's a great question, actually. I'm glad you brought this up. So when you apply for a loan, we ask for a personal financial statement. And this personal financial statement lists all your assets and all your liabilities so we can determine your net worth. So net worth is liabilities subtracted from your assets. So if you have $100,000 in assets and you have $50,000 in liabilities, your net worth is $50,000. So it's 50,000 minus 100. So all of your assets added up, that would determine that portion. And then your liabilities would be your student debt, your car loans, your credit card payments. If you had any back taxes, that's also a liability. So you'd add up all those, that'd be your liability. And then with that, you could determine your net worth. That's an excellent question. Thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else? Yes.
So suppose I'm getting into like buying stocks and stuff. What stocks do you recommend me buying?
So stocks, any type of investing is very, very risky because, I mean, although you can gauge your risk, depending on the stocks you pick, there's a sliding scale of risk that's involved with it. So like the digital currency right now, like Bitcoin or anything of that nature, that is an investment option that has a high risk factor. Although with high risk can come high reward, you can also have a high loss with that. So stocks are the same way. There's a lot of different stock options, and the best advice I could give you for stocks is to have a well-diversified portfolio, which means don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you're going to invest in the stock market, make sure you pick a large cap, a small cap, an international. I could talk about stocks all day, but it's the best advice I could give you is to be well diversified. Make sure you pick a bunch of options and to not invest in one option, because if that stocks can tank the next day, you could lose it all the next day because it's a very risky thing to do, but it can have a high reward. And for those that are day traders whose sole job is to just buy and sell the stock market, you can make out very well, but you can also lose it all very quickly. So stocks are very risky, but if you do your homework and you figure out which ones are a good pick for you, it can be very rewarding. Great question. Anyone else? Yes.
When you're in college, is getting a job the best way to consistently earn money?
Is it the best way? I'm sorry, go ahead. Say that again.
When you're in college, is getting a job the best way to consistently earn money?
I didn't catch the last part, but getting a job in college is a great way to minimize your debt and to help pay for college in general. I know a lot of people that are able to work while they're in college and to not have any debt whatsoever. So getting a job is definitely beneficial, but also in helping to pay for college before you get there, you should definitely look into scholarships. There are just so many scholarships out there that could help you pay for college. I know here I've been on a few scholarship committees, and the amount of scholarships out there is amazing. So many people want to help children and people get to college and help them be debt free if possible. So definitely don't be afraid and apply for every scholarship you can. Anyone else? Yes.
Does going to college and university have a difference in the afterlife income of going to long term?
Does going to college or university have I'm sorry, what was that?
Would there be a difference in the income you would get? Like going to a job, when you get a job before, would there be a difference by going to a college or not?
Oh, so does going to college affect you getting a job in the future? Is that your question?
Also the income, how much you get by the job.
So by going to university, you get a higher income.
Okay, gotcha. So it can, and statistically speaking, yes, statistics show that having a college education can dramatically help your the job you get in the future, and to have a high paying job, well paying job. Yes, statistically you can, but I won't say that it's always that way. I know lots of people that did not go to college and have extremely well-paying jobs and have done very, very well without going to college. But yes, going to college will help you immensely, and I would recommend it. If you can and you're able to go to college, I think you should definitely try it, see if it's a good fit for you. But if you know for a fact that college is not for you, that is absolutely fine. I know so many people who were able to get a job right out of high school. They were able to learn a trade. They've been in the construction industry, or they're into plumbing and heating, something like that, where they were able to learn a trade right out of high school, and they are doing exceptionally well. So it can, and yes, go ahead.
So
if you do a little bit of college, like you go into college and you just do like one semester of the college and then you drop out, do you get money, do you get like a refund, a small refund of your college funds?
Great question. So if you are going to go to college, I highly recommend that you try to stick it out, because if you only go for one semester, they will charge you the full amount. And if you decide to drop out, there's no refunds. So any money that you put in to go to college for even that short time period, unfortunately, you can't get it back. So if you do make the commitment to go to college, it's very important that you stick it through. I had a hard time in college, so I was a struggle for me. I was not one that was, easily pushed to go to college, and I did it. I pushed through it, and I'm so happy I did. I'm so grateful that I stuck through it, because there were times I wanted to quit. It was not easy for me. So if you do make the commitment, it's definitely important that you follow through with it, because there's no refunds, unfortunately. Any other questions? Those are great. Yes, in the back.
Is a house an asset or a liability?
A house can be both. So a house is an asset in that the asset is the entire amount that it's currently worth. So when you purchase a home, you usually get an appraisal of how much the house is worth. So that amount that the appraisal says it's worth is what you'd put in the asset field. But it could also be a liability if you have debt on the home. So great question. It can be both. Yes, go ahead.
If you're saving money, like with or without a savings account, what is the best way to stop yourself from taking money out of your savings to use it on things that you want?
Great question. So a lot of people sometimes that struggle with that, where they just spend. They just keep moving money over to cover it. Some people actually take it out in cash and they put it into envelopes. They use an envelope system. So they only spend the amount of money they have in that envelope and they can't use any more. And they keep the rest of it in the account and they don't touch it. So that's an option if you were, wanted to try that, to make sure that you keep your spending in line. Great question. Anyone else? Yes.
How much money would it be fine to have after retirement?
How much money would it be? How much money do you need to retire? Yes. Okay. That depends. So they have a lot of formulas that they use to determine how much money you need to retire. And right now, they say over $1 million is what's needed to retire. So it's a lot of money. But if you start investing as soon as you get a job, you will have no problem getting the $1 million by the time you need to retire. You will actually have probably 3 or 4 million if you start investing as soon as you get a job into your retirement. They say by the age of 30, you should have your salary in a retirement account. So if you are 30 years old and you make $65,000 a year, you should have $65,000 in your retirement account at that time. Great questions. Anyone else? Yes.
So I heard about stocks. I've heard the term like stock market crash. How does the stock market actually crash? Because I heard like it crashed like recently with the COVID pandemic, and people have been relating that to like the Great Depression. How does that actually happen?
Great question. So the stock market is based off the current economy and the current spending habits that people have. So a lot of people have been talking that a stock market crash is very evident because there's a lot of spending going on right now. Everyone is spending their money. Most people aren't saving it. So since a lot of spending is happening, the stock market's going up and up. And when it gets too high, too quickly, it can crash and people have no money. So that's in a nutshell how it can happen, where we're spending too much too fast and the market's going way too high and it's not sustainable. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anyone else?
All right, I think that's all we got time for the class section today, but thank you so much for coming in and actually meeting with the students and answering all the questions. They have a few more, but I think we ran out of time. So thank
Okay,
you.
awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.